Coming up tonight on the News at 5. Health leaders urge Montanans to take coronavirus prevention seriously as cases surge. Plus, MTN chief political reporter Mike Dennison breaks down where the Montana gubernatorial candidates stand on the future of education here in the state.
From Montana's news leader, this is MTN News at 5.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the News at 5. I'm Andy Curtis. Thanks for joining us. Today, Montana hit a new record for daily COVID cases with 348. The state also added 5 more COVID-related deaths. 1 death was reported in Yellowstone County, 1 in Flathead County, 1 in Roosevelt County, 1 in Glacier County, and 1 in Sweetgrass County. These numbers bring active cases to almost 3,600. And the death toll now stands at 183. More than 9,400 people have fully recovered from the virus. And Montana has averaged more than 300 new COVID cases a day for the last week. State hospitals say they're feeling the stress from COVID hospitalizations and are emphasizing the importance of following COVID prevention guidelines. Governor Steve Bullock was joined by several chief medical officers to address this drastic rise in COVID cases. Benefis Health System in Great Falls is currently at 115% capacity with 37 patients that were hospitalized due to COVID complications, 7 of which are in the ICU. The state reports supplies in the Billings area have also been stressed with days of single-digit bed capacity remaining available. Bullock said that while the system isn't overstressed yet, hospitals are in a difficult situation as cold and flu season approaches.
Our concerning trend in cases right now should cause us all some alarm. And what's most concerning is knowing what can happen to our healthcare system if we don't get the spread of this virus under control now. We've seen it happen in other states, and there's no real reason for it to happen in Montana.
Bullock recognized that the words from the governor won't convince everyone to take wearing a mask and social distancing seriously, but he hopes that they will listen to doctors and nurses who are dealing with cases every single day and have watched Montanans die because of the virus. And now with a look at our weather, Chief Meteorologist Curtis Grevenitz.
Beautiful day out there once again today. Good afternoon, everybody. A year ago, though, some of you may remember, we were digging out from a really big snowstorm on the Rocky Mountain front up around the East Glacier area. Deanna Leader sent this picture in a year ago. That's a full-size F-150 right there that is almost completely buried by the snow. But, of course, this year, a little different with our weather, and the sun was out again today. The sky was blue. However, that sky is going to get hazy here as wildfire smoke is already beginning to move into the western part of the state. We'll have some smoke around tomorrow. The good news is it does not look like this smoke will A, stick around for a very long time, or B, really do much to the air quality here at the surface. So looking at clean skies as we get into the weekend. Days of vitamin D. We've had a lot of sunshine the last few days and a few more days ahead of us here with almost full sunshine. Gray skies, the smoke is going to clear up, put on a happy face, and towards the middle of the month, we may have to wait for some precipitation. More in the forecast coming up.
Citing both the lack of evidence of voter fraud and the, quote, compelling public health concerns, U.S. District Court Judge Dana Christensen rejected a request by Republicans to stop Montana's use of vote by mail. The 2 suits had been filed earlier this month, challenging Governor Bullock's August directive, which allowed county election officials to decide where to conduct the general election entirely through the mail because of concerns about the pandemic. In the order, Judge Christensen cited the lack of evidence of fraud, especially with the June primary, and said Republicans had not introduced any evidence that the general election will be, quote, ripe with fraud. Christensen also said the court had no trouble concluding the COVID-19 pandemic constitutes a disaster and emergency, upholding Bullock's authority to issue his directive. And today's ruling comes one day after a pair of orders from the Montana Supreme Court settled two disputed issues involving mailed or absentee ballots for the November 3rd election. First, the High Court said in order for mail ballots to be counted this November, they must be returned to county election offices by 8 p.m. on Election Day. That ruling blocked a lower court order that said mailed ballots needed only to be postmarked by Election Day and arrive within 9 days later to be counted. But the Supreme Court also upheld a lower court order that temporarily voided a 2018 law that had restricted who can collect and turn in absentee ballots cast by other people. That ruling is a victory for Native American tribes and the state Democratic Party, who said the restrictions unfairly blocked efforts to enable more voting on Indian reservations. The Supreme Court also said it would further consider a rule more broadly on both these issues after the election. Montana's race for governor is one of the top contested positions on the 2020 ballot this year, and this week MTN News is giving you a little closer look at where Democrat Mike Cooney and Republican Greg Gianforte stand on three major issues: the economy, education, and health care. Today, in the second of our three-part series, MTN chief political reporter Mike Dennison tells us more about the gubernatorial candidate's plans and views for the future of education here in Montana.
Democrat Mike Cooney says funding Montana's public education system from pre-kindergarten to college will be a top priority for him as governor.
That's how we prepare the workforce for this state. That's how we make sure that the entrepreneurs and the businesses in this state have that pipeline of workforce that they so desperately need. So we need to make sure that we look at education as an investment.
Cooney says he wants to freeze college tuition, publicly fund pre-kindergarten, which Montana doesn't have now, and look at boosting teacher pay. But he doesn't specifically say how he'd pay for it all.
You do it through working on a budget. Now, it's up to the governor to put it out there for the people of Montana to see, and I'm willing to fight for these things, and we'll figure it out.
Republican Greg Gianforte says his top priority on education will be increasing the pay for public school teachers because Montana has the lowest average starting teacher pay in the nation. Gianforte believes those salaries can be increased by getting rid of regulations that force schools to spend money on unnecessary things other than salaries.
As I talk to public school superintendents, I feel like I'm talking to small business owners. They are tied up in red tape that's preventing money from getting to the classroom.
And he wants to expand skilled labor education in Montana to fill job shortages in many technical fields. Cooney also says he will oppose using public funds or tax credits to assist private schools in Montana and criticizes Gianforte for being a supporter of such efforts.
He is the one who has said we need to take resources, public dollars from public education and move it over to private education. You cannot call that an investment, stealing money from one and putting it into private education.
When asked about whether he'd pursue such a program as governor, Gianforte says only that parents know what's best for their kids and that he is for strong public schools. Yet Gianforte has clearly been an advocate for school choice programs and private schools. He and his wife Susan have funded scholarship programs for students at Montana private schools, and their family charitable foundation has contributed at least $12 million to Petra Academy in Bozeman, a private Christian school that their 4 children attended. Gianforte also co-authored a brief at the U.S. Supreme Court last year, arguing that Montana's constitutional ban against public aid to religious schools should not block a state tax credit funding scholarships for those schools. Gianforte also wants to freeze state funding and says it's not the time to start new education programs before first focusing on increasing teacher pay. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Tomorrow, the final part of the series looks at where the candidates stand on healthcare issues. The Great Falls Clinic Legacy Foundation broke ground on their new patient housing facility this month. Plans for the Harold and Carmen Polson Legacy Housing Facility began in 2017. The facility will provide free temporary housing for out-of-town patients receiving treatment at the clinic. The $3 million project will feature 12 patient guest rooms with double queen and king rooms to accommodate large and small families. It will also have a self-serve kitchen and dining area, a laundry room, and places where families can gather, including an outdoor fire pit. Approximately 40% of all the clinic's patients travel from out of town to receive medical treatment.
It's expensive, and some people will forego treatment altogether because they can't afford the hotel or the gas or the food. And it's also a level of comfort. When you're undergoing cancer treatment, it's always better to be in a comfortable and inviting environment versus that you're just not used to.
The facility is expected to be completed by the summer of 2021. And when we come back, Chief Meteorologist Curtis Grebenitz will have a complete check on your forecast. And later, some maybe not so surprising stats are showing a lot of people were in our state parks this year. Why FWP thinks our wild places were so popular.
Storm Tracker weather starts now with Chief Meteorologist Curtis Grebenitz.
Welcome back, everybody. Good Wednesday afternoon to you all. Live look up at Glacier, and oh boy, the aspens are popping. Color really developing across a lot of the states here. Very nice. Little haze, though, beginning to come into the western part of the state. Central Montana, this look from Geyser over towards the Highwoods here. We had a little cloud cover earlier this morning. 64 degrees currently in Great Falls. In Helena, 69 lovely degrees. A little cooler than yesterday, but with the sunshine out there, not much in the way of complaints, except maybe the clouds hung around a little tough out there in the central part of the state where it's a little cooler around Lewistown, only 56. The other side of the divide, we've got some warmer air. Look at that, 78 degrees in Missoula. Eastern Montana hit by some pretty good wind coming out of the north here today. This wind, look at that, will subside as we go through tonight and tomorrow. Not a very windy day, a little breeze out of the southwest off of the Rocky Mountain front, 15, maybe 20 miles per hour, but that's nothing for those folks up there. Otherwise, a little breeze maybe on Friday developing in the eastern part of the state. On the radar, hardly anything going on. Again, a couple of showers, central, south central parts of Canada moving into the Dakotas here. Technically, the fires in the state that are still active. I say that because they're not out, they're not completely contained. Firefighters still working these fires. However, we did have a fire yesterday, a new fire developed in the afternoon. Remember, yesterday it was windy, it was hot for the end of September, and it was dry. This antelope fire, crews worked on this fire all night long last night and put it out. So it grew to over 100 acres southwest of Three Forks, south of Homestake Pass there, and looking at about 100% containment on that as well. Well, it's out. So that certainly is good news. Wet weather, we could use some. It's all back east through the Great Lakes into the Northeast. So if after the newscast here, you go outside, you look off towards the west, you'll start to probably see a little in the way of some wildfire smoke here from fires in Idaho and also California. The high is shifted, and that's allowing more of a southwest flow to direct some of that smoke into Big Sky country. But unfortunately, we're not directing any moisture our way. That high will dominate. We'll have some clouds coming through later Thursday into Friday, maybe a couple of showers far eastern Montana, but Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, all the way through Wednesday, looking very dry here and continued warm for the beginning of October. October 1st is tomorrow. Tonight, a little chill out there. Some places getting down into the upper 20s, northeast Montana. Not talking record cold, but chilly temperatures nonetheless. And here is the forecast for tomorrow. Not a bad day. However, not as pretty as the last few days. We'll have that wildfire smoke kind of overhead with partly cloudy skies. So a little grayer than what we have been accustomed to here over the last few days. High temperatures in the 70s off the Rocky Mountain front. We still may have some 60s, even some 50s into far northeastern Montana. We're a little closer to a cooler air mass there. Lewistown, that's a decent day. Back up into the 60s, and around the Helena area we should be in the 60s and the 70s with, again, partly cloudy skies and also that S word, no, not snow. I don't know what you were thinking. Smoke coming through, 74 degrees for the high tomorrow, 72 on Friday, and by Friday that smoke should clear out. The weekend next week looking really nice, upper 70s to near 80 degrees, and for Great Falls, kind of a smoky sky tomorrow. Again, I do not believe that the smoke will translate down to poor air quality at the surface. We should be looking at that smoke mainly in the upper levels. A little cooler on Friday and a great first weekend of October.
Well, some new data has confirmed that Montana's state parks saw many more visitors this year. MTN's Jonathan Ambarian talked to Fish, Wildlife and Parks about what led to the increase.
Overall, Montana state parks have reported a 25% increase in visitation for the first half of the year, compared to the same time in 2019. Many of the most popular parks, like Helena's Spring Meadow Lake, are those close to larger cities.
So a lot of those parks that people are really getting out to on some of those nice spring days, they're easy to get to, and they're also looked at as places to safely recreate that time of year.
The state's most visited park was again Giant Springs in Great Falls, which saw nearly 200,000 visits between January and June. Spring Meadow had just under 80,000 visits, 29% higher than the first half of 2019. Fish, Wildlife and Parks says mild weather early in the year likely contributed to the jump in visitors, but they also say the COVID-19 pandemic may have been a factor.
We did have a lot of people that were new to the state park system, so I think that a lot of people wanting to get outside, experience something new, really attracted a whole new audience to the state park system.
Tim Gittens says he's not surprised visitation is up. He's come to Spring Meadow regularly with his granddaughter Emily over the last 2 years.
It seems very busy and a lot more people. Prior to this year, it was mostly elderly people like myself, usually with their grandkids or something, but this year a lot more young adults with children.
The overall increase in visitation came as several parks like Bannock and Lewis and Clark Caverns saw fewer visitors, partly due to COVID-related restrictions. Leaders say during the first half of the year, many of their visitors were locals, particularly during COVID restrictions. But they expect the numbers for the rest of 2020 will show a jump in out-of-state visitors as well. At Spring Meadow Lake, Jonathan Ambarian, MTN News.
Coming up next on the news at 5, it isn't just renters needing some extra help due to the pandemic. Landlords are feeling the pinch as well and fighting back against eviction moratoriums.
From Montana's news leader, you're watching MTN News at 5.
Welcome back, everybody. Some landlords are going to court to try to end the CDC's eviction moratorium. It blocks tenants from being kicked out for not paying rent. Alicia Nieves has more on the help landlords say tenants need instead and how quickly they are hoping to get the moratorium to end.
Millions of renters are safe from eviction after the CDC issued an eviction moratorium at the beginning of September. But landlords like Andy Orfatelli in Florida,
my lender wants his money,
to Rebecca Welsh in Kentucky, are saying they cannot afford this moratorium mandate.
I mean, literally right now, I'm supporting probably three households, not just mine. Pregnant.
We're concerned that an order like this could force many operators into bankruptcy and those properties could be lost.
Bob Penninger is with the National Apartment Association, which has joined landlords in at least 3 states in a lawsuit against the CDC's federal ban on most evictions.
We were forced into this situation with the inaction of Congress in putting together a stimulus package, and then the combination of the CDC order laid over the top of that has forced us to where we have to take legal action.
Are you saying that in the middle of a pandemic, people should be allowed to be evicted and in some cases put on the street with little or no protection? Or are you saying that a government mandate to this extent cannot go unfunded?
This is really to try to force Congress to get back to the table and talk about a solution here.
The National Apartment Association wants a stimulus package with money allocated to renters instead of a moratorium because the money would trickle down to help landlords pay their mortgages and keep their property.
If Congress doesn't act, what happens?
You're going to begin to see operators move to the brink of foreclosure.
The courts are expected to rule on the lawsuit against the CDC by the end of October, and there is a chance the court could block or end the eviction moratorium at that time. I'm Alicia Nieves reporting.
We'll be right back.
From Montana's news leader, you're watching MTN News at 5.
Thanks for making us a part of your evening. You can catch us back here again tonight at 6. NBC Nightly News is next.